Hi, I'm your host, Saima, and welcome to Healing Horizons. Today I'm joined by our amazing guest, Russell Van Brocklen, researcher, educator, and founder of dyslexiaclasses.com, whose work is transforming how learners understand their brain and their potential. His approach is bold yet beautifully simple. 90-second research to shift learners from shame to safety and from feeling incapable to recovering their true identity as empowered learners. So, this conversation uncovers how quick, targeted neurological research can rewire old stories and open new pathways to confidence. So, Russell, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You're warmly welcome. It's an honor to have you here, Russell. So, Russell, you often talk about the emotional burden many learners carry. So, can you share that? What does learning shame look like from your perspective?
Well, you have to understand that I'm severely dyslexic. So I tend to look at it through that lens, but that also makes what I do very relevant for people with less severe learning concerns. When you're different, especially when you learn differently, your brain is designed literally drastically differently. And you're in a household where you're expected to learn and do very well. And no matter how hard you work, it seems that you just can't quite keep up. And your family looks down at you from that, especially if your siblings, your brothers and sisters, work hard and do extremely well. That's where I think a lot of this comes in. And what I wanted to discuss today is a way that can help you focus, that can help individuals like this, who I want you to stop and think for a second. I want you to figure out your speciality, your area of extreme interest and ability. And then I want you to think about this question. In that area, do you have ideas flying around your head at light speed? Here's the key question, but with little to no organization. A lot of you are going to answer yes. And the secret to solving what you're going through is to force your brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. Let me say that again. The secret is to force your brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output so that you can think step by step by step. And once you do that, a lot of the problems you're facing right now will disappear. You still have to plan properly, you still have to work hard, but then you should start getting the results that you see in your siblings, and things should just be a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for explaining that, firstly, Russell. And your perspective on learning shame is really thoughtful, I would say. And I really appreciate how you bring compassion into the conversation because the way you describe those emotional blocks makes it really easy to understand just how deeply they can affect someone's confidence and behavior. Now, you have a way of putting language to something many people feel but can't articulate. The idea of a 90-second reset is both intriguing and accessible. So, what makes this short window so effective for rewiring learning identity?
Well, this is the first part of a process that I use with my most successful student. And just so you know what her background is, and just understand, I never saw this before, Casey. I will never see this again, not to this magnitude. But if you put in the time and effort, it can happen. I met Casey when she was 10. Near the end of fifth grade, she was reading at the second grade level, basically like a 7-year old, and she just seemed like I didn't know what the type of person I'd met when I first talked to her, and she was very insistent that she was going to do reading first and not writing. And I said, "Oh, okay, here's how you do it. You're not going to do it, but if you do 5, 10, 20-minute sessions a couple times a week, it's up to your mom." I didn't know Casey. She locked herself in her room for 2 to 3 hours a night using a slightly more evolved form of what I'm going to show you today, uh, reading over her book, The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt. You see, the key point is during the intervention period until she got to grade level, I assigned her a book that she really, really liked, a subject, US President Theodore Roosevelt. but the book was 900 pages long, designed for 16 to 18-year-olds. Casey's 10, reading like she's and writing like she's 7. So I gave her the book, I gave her the process, 2 to 3 hours a night for 6 months. Then she's reading and writing as if she's 16. She jumped something like 8 grade levels in 6 months. Now, again, I never saw that before. I will never see that again. That type of improvement happens all the time. Normally takes 1 to 3 years, and usually 18 months to 2 years. She did it in 6 months because she did it so intensely. So what allowed that huge increase? It wasn't just about the ability to read. It was about the ability to think. And here's how we basically do it. Uh, so I want you to, first of all, I want you to think about what your goal is, because that's what we're going to address today. Because you're in a slump, you feel ashamed because you can't learn properly, and everything you try just doesn't seem to work. What I want you to focus on is we're going to focus first on what a word that means for you and what you're really trying to accomplish. All right. So how we do that, it's what I like to call the half circle process. And I'm going to show you the first 2 parts because you can do that in 90 seconds. And then I'm going to show you the third part so you can extend this and you can start learning how to develop an advanced vocabulary, which is the foundation of how to learn to read quickly, and then also how to discuss things at an evolved level, and that'll help you really move up the ladder with your schoolwork. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to think about the hero. In any story you've learned, there's always a hero. If they're smart about it, there's always a universal theme, and there's always a villain who's trying to prevent the hero from accomplishing their goal. That's in any story of any kind, at anything that mankind has ever wrote throughout our history. And before we get into that, a lot of people ask, well, what do you mean about a universal theme? A universal theme tries to express things in like one word. So let me give you an example. If you're looking at a movie review, a lot of times, and I'm just going to pick on the Ivy League, Harvard, Stanford, Yale, schools in the United States. They produce a lot of journalism majors and they write reviews of movies. What they typically do, and they're horrible at it, is they'll tell you this happened in the movie, this happened in this movie, this happened in the movie. It's like watching a football match. Let's say maybe you recorded it and you want to see, you came back to see it later, and then somebody telling you, oh, the score was Australia 13, India 4. Okay. Well, now you know the score. It's not worth watching the match anymore. Okay. So what you need to, that's kind of like a waste of what this is. Or they might say, India scored 6, the US scored 2. Okay. Well, now you know who won. Why watch it? So how do we do this a better way? So let's just take a movie, one of the most famous movies of all time. Okay. Casablanca. All right. With Humphrey Bogart. Actually, no, that's a bit going back too far back. Let's take Star Wars. All right. Let's take Return of sorry, let's take Empire Strikes Back, which is probably the best one of that series. All right. What is the universal theme of that movie? I would call revelation. All right. Luke learns his father, Darth Vader, is his father. Okay. What I would do is then I would take revelation and I would write a review based on how I think the actors did, how I think the director did, and how I think the screenwriter did with that universal theme. Now people know what I think of the movie. They have a much deeper understanding of what's going on, why they might want to see it, but I didn't tell them this happened, this happened, this happened. We literally went from writing reviews like children to doing something with a certain sophistication. And the children in this regard have usually have graduated from Harvard. So that's how powerful this is. So it's a one-word universal theme that represents something that applies to all humanity across cultures, across time, across anything. So what we want to do is to come up with your universal theme. So why are you studying? What is the purpose? And I will tell you that what shocked me is a lot of times when I'm talking to people who feel shame about how they're doing in school, it's because they want to honor their family. For example, if we're talking about in India, everybody wants to go to Indian Institute of Technology. Everybody. And people that I met that just missed there, they would go to MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the finest technical school in North America, in the United States, on full scholarship. That's how good the place is. So when we're looking at that, it's the universal theme of honor. Okay. So what we would start off with is we start off with the hero. I want you to put in your name. And then you would put in what does the hero want to do? Well, your name, I wish to honor my parents by doing well in school. Okay. Now, here's the issue with that. That starts off really nice. But when we're looking at honor, it's a very, very, very broad word. Okay. And when you try to apply honor to anything specific, it's just nothing happens because it's way too broad. All right. So what we have to do is how can I would put honor into a thesaurus and try to find a word and a definition. And best thing to do is to go to thesaurus.com and put in honor, but don't use dictionary.com. It's a simplistic dictionary for little children. You want to go to Merriam-Webster's online dictionary or Oxford English or any other online dictionary of that quality. And then you want to look at all the words that all the synonyms that they give you and find a word in the definition. And yes, you look up each word, each definition. And if you really want to improve your reading skills, I would type out the word and type out your chosen definition. As you keep doing this, you're going to eventually know what that word is. That's what I do with my dyslexic kids, dyslexic adults. And then they eventually they know the word, their definition. And after a while, they develop a vocabulary of hundreds of evolved words. So once you find the one, you're looking for one that meets two things. One that just feels right and one that has a definition that best matches what you're trying to do. And then you want to balance it between those two. And yes, this does take a lot of time, but this is the little lens you're going to focus your studying habits over. Remember, we're trying to get past the shame that you're feeling. All right. So a lot of times when I'm going through this with students that, they feel they need to honor their family, what we really get down to is we'll get down to a word, or sometimes it's two words, self-improvement. They want to improve themselves in their family's eyes. And that's much more direct. If you spend more time on this, you can get a more precise word and it's worth it. But let's just look at the words called self-improvement. That's our universal theme now. That's what it is in 90 seconds. You're now looking to self-improve. So when you're going through an academic task and it's just beating you up and you're like, you feel shamed, you feel like you're going to give up, it's not worth continuing the effort. Just think about your universal theme of self-improvement. And that tends to get you back on track. Now, let's go ahead and let's give you the other tools that you need to really start developing an advanced vocabulary to allow you to discuss things at a much more evolved level. Okay. So what we're going to do there is now we have to pick up who is the ultimate villain that's going to prevent you from trying to achieve self-improvement. Well, what do you think that is for most again, you generally start off with the word honor. What is it that prevents you from doing this? Well, remember that question that I asked you about ideas flying around your head at light speed, but with little to no organization? For a lot of you, you're going to say yes. So what we're talking about is your brain just functions differently. You think incredibly rapidly. And for a lot of you, I'm just going to tell you what's going on. The back part of your brain, where a lot of academic thinking goes when you're like 5 through, college, you don't have most of your peers will have a lot of neural activity there. You're going to have very little. But the front part of your brain is massively overactive, about 2.5 times. So what we need to do is control that chaos. So the villain in this part is just you thinking so rapidly with little to no organization. So what we're going to do is we're going to have you practice this a lot. And then you're going to come up with a reason. I want to remember what we did is we moved to self-improvement. We're going to say your name wants to self-improve and get over the chaos in our brains and give me a really good reason. Eventually, you're going to want to come up with 2 or 3. All right. And then you're going to, with that, you're then going to go and look at this from the villain's point of view. Your brain that's just completely scattershot with little to no reason. Why is your brain doing this? Okay. Well, you probably have some form of learning difference. You're neurodiverse. Your brain likes focusing on its speciality, your area of extreme interest and ability. Your brain wants to focus on learning not from the general to the specific, but the specific to the general. You're going to take those ideas and run that through the same way that I just showed you. And then you're going to practice that. What I would do is I would try to move, now that you understand this, move your education into classes that you really, really like, that you're really into. Even though your parents might say, I want you to be a doctor, I want you to be a lawyer, I want you to be whatever. If you can try to shift that more into an area that you're really interested in, that you're really good in, you're going to find that you're going to perform so much better. You can go back and let your parents know that you're looking to honor them by doing well in school, but you need to do things through self-improvement, things that you're really good at, and see if you can push more towards that general area. As you enter an area that you're naturally very gifted in, that you're really interested in, you can find that you can perform extraordinarily well. But that's generally how I would move things, restore your self-esteem, and move your area so that you can be academically successful.
I really appreciate the way you explain that, Russell. And it's clear that how much thought goes into the goal and purpose behind the reset. And I really love how you tie it to self improvement, like you said, making it feel actionable and empowering at the same time rather than abstract. Now, speaking of your work with learners, you work extensively with dyslexic students. So, what strengths have you discovered in their cognitive patterns that often go unnoticed?
Well, it's dyslexia, attention deficit disorder, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So let's just take the one that people think you can't do anything about. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So what I've noticed with this group of students is parents will say, or peers will say, I can't get the kid with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder to sit still. I can't get them to do anything. Exactly. Because you're outside the speciality, you're outside their area of extreme interest and ability. This works with for dyslexia and and for any neurodiverse. Move them into classes that focus on that area. And I'll give you a little hint. Here's what to give you an example. One of the students I'm working with, I'm just going to call him Bob. Bob is 13. He's dyslexic. Up in up in North America. His favorite thing is chemistry. He loves watching a video that turns it's a chemistry video on how to take paint thinner and turn it into cherry soda. He said, "Well, this is designed for 13-year-old kids like him." I said, "Bob, no, it's not. It's designed for college juniors in chemistry. His reading and writing is that of like a 7-year-old, but he's doing such advanced stuff. Now he's 13. We can solve his reading and writing, but imagine when he goes to finish up college and he goes to a grad program. In his speciality, he will be able to walk into a PhD program and just dominated from day one or soon thereafter. So if you're like this, just remember where your brain was designed for graduate school. You just have to get through undergrad and focus on it, and you will do extraordinarily well.
Mm-hmm. That's such a fascinating perspective, Russell. And I really appreciate how you highlight the strengths rather than just the challenges. You make it really clear that dyslexic students, learners, I would say, bring unique ways of thinking and problem solving that often go unrecognized. And I really love how you shine a light on those hidden abilities. Your insight really reframes a conversation around learning differences in such a positive and empowering way.
Well, let me give you an example. I went to law school to learn to read and write. I was reading and writing like a sixth grader. I got through college. I'm sorry, 6-year-old. I got through college with reading and writing like a 6-year-old. So I go into law school. Professor calls on me. They use the Socratic method. They try to destroy you and asking you questions you can't answer repeatedly until you're just done. All right. Until you adapt. Didn't happen to me. When he called me on the second day of contracts, I responded as his equal for 15 minutes. He literally couldn't shake me. I couldn't shake him. He's a dyslexic professor teaching law for 30 years. And I'm some, kid in my mid 20s who walks in and I'm his equal. That's because I was in my speciality. Then I was asked to go ahead and, with my first program, which was took dyslexic high school kids from reading, I jumped their reading and writing levels up 8 grade levels within one class period a year for the school year. To get that approved, I was supposed to take 2 to 3 years, if ever. I got it done in less than 2 weeks. That's the advantage when you're neurodiverse and you go to grad school. You own the place day one or soon thereafter.
That makes sense. That's really remarkable, Russell. Now, to someone listening who has struggled for years with feeling not smart enough, what one step would you like to recommend to them?
Really, it's gonna be tough, but really try to focus at least one class that you're really good at, because what you're gonna find is your system is gonna try to make you well-rounded educationally before you specialize. We generally just want to specialize. So try to push for at least one class that you're really interested in, that you're really good at, or in the field or in the classes that you must take. See if there's a way you can push through independent work to do work that is harder than what everybody else is expected to do, because otherwise the teachers won't approve, and try to push into something that you're really interested in, or at least somewhat interested in. And what you will find is that the professors are normally, yeah, or your teacher's like, okay, you want to do extra work? Sure. And you just move it a little bit, and you'll find you will be performing so much better. And actually, it tends to be less work because we're so much better at it.
That's such practical and encouraging advice. And I really love, Russell, how you make it feel achieve, how you make it feel like it can be achieved. Like the way you frame starting with just one class someone is genuinely interested in takes away so much of the pressure and makes the idea of learning feel exciting again. And you really have a talent for turning what can feel overwhelming into something approachable and not motivating.
Oh, yeah, it's that simple, and it's just because this is stuff that I lived. I went through school after school, college after college, taking their best professors, just trying to figure out how this system learns. All right. People were shocked at how many different majors that I had. One semester I'm taking 15 credits in college just in communication, 101 through 499. They said that's not possible. I said, well, there's a way around the computer system. The next one, I'm doing an internship for 15 credits in political science in the New York State legislature. And then the next semester, I'm taking law classes. The one after that, I'm taking master's in business administration classes. It's trying to figure out how to learn through multiple subjects and then finding a system that generally works for everything.
That's truly remarkable, Russell. So thank you for showing us that learning identity is not fixed but fluid, and that safety, not pressure, is what activates true potential. And for anyone listening, tuning in, let this be a reminder a shift in self belief can begin in under 2 minutes. So give yourself permission to reset, to rewire, and to reclaim the learner you have always been capable of becoming.